In this Crystal of Atlan video, we'll be exploring the core gameplay of the new free-to-play MMORPG, and I'll be giving you a look at the range of modes and features available to it at launch, which is today. Crystal of Atlan has a bright anime-like aesthetic, and it has an expansive class system, several game modes, and strong combat that is easy to pick up, but hard to master. Before I get into the details though, a big shout out to Skystone Games for sponsoring this video. If you guys like what you see and you want to check the game out, again, it is free to play. You can use our link below to support the channel. So what is Crystal of Atlan? Crystal of Atlan is a free-to-play MMO action RPG that is globally launching on PC, mobile, and PlayStation 5. Originally releasing in 2023 in China, it topped the charts and trended heavily on social media, and now the development team aims to bring this success worldwide with a global launch that has already been through several rounds of testing across multiple platforms. It brings a high-octane action RPG experience with a strong emphasis on fast-flowing combos set in a magic punk world, mixing magic and machinery. While exploring the world of Atlan, you can become part of the Adventurers Guild, embarking on missions to help various colorful characters and eventually uncover mysteries around the Crystal of Atlan itself, reportedly the source of all energy in the world. Players will explore mines, factories, the mysterious Void Realm, and even a circus-like Wonderland area in their journey, but let's get into how the game plays since I'm sure you're curious about that. Crystal of Atlan has a clear focus on combat, and it feels like the fighting system could easily be slotted into a dedicated action game with fast-paced, fluid responsive controls and impactful punchy skills. Abilities and classes help distinguish gameplay themes, allowing players to engage with foes the way they want to. Crystal of Atlan leans more towards an action RPG in this regard and less MMO. Even basic attacks are impactful. Enemies react to being hit depending on the skill, can be disrupted or outright stunned if their defense is broken. There's also an element of tactical play because dodging is essential, especially in some of the bigger boss fights. Aerial combat is fluid and well thought out, with the ability to seamlessly move into the air with the BATK ability across all classes. This is reminiscent of some action games where a launcher allows for transitions between different combat styles, moving to midair and ground in the same way. Certain skills change in midair too, allowing yet for more variety in playstyle. In saying that, the moves don't change completely while in air though, allowing someone who might be unfamiliar with a new skill to know what to expect. Overall, the combat leans heavily on quick, snappy abilities that typically feel very good to use. Crucially, the game never appears visually confusing though, which can happen in anime-esque titles sometimes, as color coding, effect speed, and the smart use of camera angles means that players will never be distracted or drawn away from the focus in combat, even on longer, higher-level animations. Several well-established mechanics from MMOs, such as don't stand in the fire and hide behind the rock, do make an appearance in Crystal Atlan, along with some other surprising additions, so it's not completely an action RPG in this sense. Perhaps the most memorable boss is a boss in the Void, where the player has to attack the boss and its clone, but can only damage one of them depending on a buff that became active as the fight began. The buff is color-coded, so the character and enemy absorb attacks of the same color. This changes regularly throughout the encounter, keeping players on their toes throughout. This added another level of thought to gameplay at the time and requires close attention, blending action RPG and MMO components. Crystal of Atlan comes with 5 classes at launch, and more are promised in the near future. Each is recognizable for what their specialty will be. For example, the Berserker, covered in scars, charges into battle without paying heed for his own safety. In contrast, the Magiblade, immaculately dressed and presented, has a precise and calculated playstyle. The Magipunk theme is represented in the class system with a well-balanced helping of both magical fantasy and chunky neon-lit technology. The newest class addition, the Fighter, and its related advanced classes Cloudstrider and Starbreaker fit in here too. The Fighter is an outright brawler initially, closing in on foes and damaging them with heavy punches and kicks. It gains the capability of specializing in an elemental mix of range and close attacks with a magical flavor in the Cloudstrider, or a hard-hitting, veritable comet of a warrior as the Starbreaker, reliant on flames, technological gauntlets, and airborne attacks to punish enemies. Classes also have their own mechanics, like the Crimson Barrier for the Berserker, where they sacrifice their own health to create a barrier or shield, and to the Heat mode for the Gunner that provides a damage bonus which can be increased based on how much heat the player has. This makes them somewhat engaging, and curious-minded players will want to know how they work and how to best maximize their abilities, which is always a good sign in a game. However, classes could benefit from an explanation tooltip or reminder in-game of what certain gauges mean, as when you initially unlock these, you may have to go looking for explanations. Design-wise, each class fits well with the Magipunk theme and feels like they have the appropriate balance between magic and technology depending on the class. The Magister and subclasses have a strong emphasis on magical abilities and therefore is focused on this with very little technology to speak of in their character model, whereas the Puppeteer relies on a mechanized marionette to perform and tag team abilities, relying heavily on the tech side as a result. Each class offers its own definitive perspective on the setting. Classes have noticeably different playstyles even within subclasses. Despite having the same origin, each class is clearly defined by what they do, and it sticks to it. The Musketeer at heart is a ranged tactical class, for example. While the subclasses have very different playstyles, like the Bounty Hunter and its running and gunning playstyle, and the Gunner, which is a more stationary but heavy-hitting class, it still stays true to the core aspects of the class. Exploring in Crystal of Atlan, including quests and character interaction, is very much along the lines of an MMO, even if the combat is more on the action RPG side, with quest givers and expansive hub locations. The game can be enjoyed solo or in a group, and it's really only the higher level raid dungeon content that requires a team, and multiplayer with friends is not difficult to set up. Fleets, the game's version of guilds, helps with this, allowing players to link up with each other, and of course, friends can be brought along for the ride as well. Crystal of Atlan has a variety of game modes for players to dive into. Adventure mode takes the player through the story, allowing them to experience the world and meet its inhabitants. Co-op battle allows players to take on various dungeons in the game. Currently, Hex Chess is the sole dungeon on offer, but more on that later. Ranked Match is the PvP mode of Crystal of Atlan, where players can challenge each other in groups or one-on-one, and Challenge mode has a range of game styles ranging from waves of enemies, challenging the characters from story mode, exploring the Void Realm, and more, all for material rewards. The Void Realm is an area which is focused on higher difficulty and rewarding players with high-quality materials. Aside from the obvious materials benefit of doing this, the Void was a challenging and engaging place to spend time, and it allows players to push themselves a little bit further than Adventure mode, which tended to be a little too easy. This area is divided into stages: the Rim, Ravine, Valley, and Nest, each more challenging than the last. The realm is dark, mysterious, and intentionally sinister, with Yam introduced as the player progresses through the main quest line, acting as the player's guide to the Dark Realm. Players encounter tougher foes and challenges as they progress. Areas in the Void are typically laid out in a similar sequence with a linear path and multiple enemies to defeat, and players will need to use all of their abilities to dispatch foes effectively. At approximately the midpoint of each area, the player will be faced with side challenges as well. These are typically specific tasks or often mini-bosses designed to test the player and usually give a hint as to the main boss's ability for the area. These can be mini-bosses, clearing enemy waves, platforming challenges, and more. During your jaunt through the Void, you will encounter multiple bosses, each with their own mechanics, powers, and abilities. Players should take care with these as they can be surprisingly difficult, but the aforementioned side challenges weaken them, so it's best to complete these as you go. There are 6 in total currently available in the Void Realm, with the Rim and Ravine having 2 bosses each, and the other 2 zones having 1 boss each. Mechanics in these fights have a very distinct MMO flavor. For example, avoid damage by paying attention and moving out of indicated areas, or avoid crowd controlling effects and take advantage of openings and skills to break out of attack chains as and when needed. Despite this, the combat still feels very action-oriented, but has a little bit of that MMO-ness into it that anyone would be expecting from this sort of game. The Void overall is considerably more difficult than the standard adventure mode, however it can be played co-op as well as solo, allowing for friends and fleetmates to team up to take on the tides of enemies. Completing each provides rewards that enables a player to craft better equipment and challenge higher levels, including the final nest area. When they attempt Hex Chess, players can group in teams of 4 to 8 and will initially individually fight the Hex Chess guard as before. This boss has a range of physical and electro-based attacks. Players will need to avoid a slew of AoE attacks as well as a building paralysis effect from several of the boss's assaults. This boss will even impale a player given a chance, so they should dodge or use their special recovery ability to escape. Players will then move on to either Leotids, a savage knight boss, or Ophelia, a powerful caster. This time, they're joined by a teammate and some team-based mechanics start to appear, as Leotids will tether characters together, forcing them to work together to trip him when he charges, and Ophelia will summon multiple miniature suns, requiring teamwork to destroy these in order to render her vulnerable to attacks again. Players will then move on to Polonaise, regrouping with their entire team. Polonaise ramps things up, dropping wheels on the battlefield that must be returned to him, and a limited time to do so necessitates good communication. He will also lock onto specific players and chase them, leaving hazardous flames in his wake, and the player in question must guide him carefully to avoid impeding their team. Finally, if successful, players will move on to the final challenge of the mode, Claudius and Maradia, who have their own range of attacks and abilities. Defeating these will complete Hex Chess and reward the players handsomely. Crystal of Atlan has a number of monetization areas, mostly within the shop where a player can purchase bundles of items and currency among other options in order to hasten their progress. The main incentive to purchase items is character energy. Characters have an energy meter which is depleted by varying amounts at any time they undertake a major activity. This can be a deterrent to some players for a number of reasons. This kind of restriction can be frustrating, especially when enjoying the game and wanting to see more. Players will receive multiple battery items over the course of their adventure, which can be used to replenish energy, but these are also limited in daily usage, and I still found myself running out of energy while playing despite this. Batteries can also be purchased in the in-game store as part of the Starting Boosts bundle. This can be partially mitigated by purchasing the Phantasium Pass in the store, which increases the daily energy cap by 20 and the account energy cap by 120. The Phantasium Pass has a number of other benefits, such as increased adventure XP, accessing skills 5 levels ahead of when a character should unlock them, and more. This lasts for 15 or 30 days, and while the bonus is useful, it could perhaps last longer for the prices involved. These passes do apply across the entire account, so those players who enjoy multiple characters who are switching due to running out of energy will be able to take advantage of this. Final thoughts. In summary, Crystal of Atlan is an enjoyable anime-inspired MMO action RPG that feels great to play and typically leaves you wanting to play more. A few adjustments would help though, such as more explanation of key mechanics like classes and nullification, and a revision of the energy mechanic to allow for more game time, at least for the first character, but overall, I enjoyed the experience with Crystal of Atlan pretty much. Characters are easy to level without losing the sense of making progress, and there is plenty of content to dive into here, a wide range of classes, environments, modes, and multiplayer opportunities. Again, a big shout out to Skystone Games for sponsoring this video. It is free to play. If you want to download it to support our channel, you can use our link below to do so, and let me know what you guys think.
Yeah.